There are moments in life when the weariness you carry cannot be explained by hours slept or miles walked. It is a deeper fatigue, the kind that settles into the quiet spaces of the heart and lingers in the background of every thought. You may feel it as a heaviness behind the eyes, a slowing of enthusiasm, a sense that the world has grown louder while your inner voice has gone silent. And in those moments, the ego is quick to judge, quick to whisper that something is wrong with you, that you have fallen behind, that you are failing to keep up with the demands of life. But listen gently now, because what you are experiencing is not a flaw in your character. It is a message from your soul. Exhaustion arrives when the old ways of being can no longer sustain who you are becoming. It is the sacred signal that the structures you once relied upon, your habits, your beliefs, your relentless striving, have reached their natural limit. The soul does not shout, it invites. And sometimes the invitation arrives disguised as fatigue. You have been carrying identities that are no longer true, responsibilities that were never meant to be permanent, expectations borrowed from others that have nothing to do with your authentic path. Of course you are tired. You have been living from a place that no longer fits. There is a profound misunderstanding in our culture that exhaustion is something to be conquered, medicated, or pushed through. We celebrate the relentless pace, the sleepless nights, the constant proving. Yet the wisdom of life itself operates on a different rhythm. The earth rests each night. The seasons pause and change. Even your breath moves in cycles of expansion and release. Why would you, a living expression of the same intelligence, be exempt from this sacred law of rest? Exhaustion is not the enemy of growth, it is the doorway to it. When you are depleted, the ego loosens its grip. The masks you have worn begin to feel too heavy to hold in place. The stories you have told yourself about who you must be start to dissolve. This is not a collapse, it is a clearing. The soul uses weariness to soften the hardened edges of self-importance and fear, to quiet the noise of constant doing so that a deeper knowing can be heard. In the stillness of exhaustion, truth has space to emerge. You may notice that during these times, your tolerance for what is false diminishes. Conversations that once felt acceptable now feel draining. Goals that once motivated you now feel empty. This is not apathy. It is discernment awakening within you. You are being guided away from what no longer aligns. The fatigue is not random. It is precise. It is intelligent. It is purposeful. There is a gentle rebuilding that occurs when you stop resisting this process. Not a dramatic overhaul fueled by willpower, but a quiet reorientation toward what is real. When you allow yourself to rest, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, you give life permission to rearrange itself through you. Rest is not inactivity, it is receptivity. It is the state in which you remember that you are not the source of the universe's energy, but a channel for it. Consider how often you have confused effort with worthiness, how frequently you have believed that your value is measured by output, productivity, or the approval of others. Exhaustion exposes this illusion. It asks you a single, liberating question. Who are you when you stop trying to be someone? In that question lies the seed of freedom. You are not your accomplishments. You are not your failures. You are not the roles you perform or the expectations you meet. You are the awareness in which these experiences arise. When you are tired enough to stop chasing validation, you may finally notice the quiet presence that has been with you all along, calm, steady, untouched by the fluctuations of circumstance. This presence does not demand effort. It invites trust. There is a sacred pause hidden within burnout, a moment where life gently removes the props you have leaned on so that you can discover your inner foundation. This pause is not punishment. It is protection. It prevents you from continuing down paths that would ultimately cost you your peace. It interrupts the momentum of misalignment before it becomes irreversible. In this sense, exhaustion is grace in disguise. As you sit with this weariness, you may feel emotions rising that you have long kept at bay. Sadness, grief, disappointment, even anger may surface. Welcome them. They are not obstacles to healing. They are expressions of it. Emotions are energy-seeking movement, and exhaustion weakens the barriers that once held them in. Allow them to flow without judgment. In their release, space is created for something new to be born. The ego fears this emptiness because it cannot control it. Yet emptiness is the womb of creation. When the old identities fall away, When the familiar narratives dissolve, you are left with a fertile silence. In that silence, guidance arises naturally, not as a command, but as a knowing, not as pressure, but as clarity. You begin to sense what truly matters, what deserves your energy, what can be gently released. You may notice that your priorities shift. Simplicity becomes attractive. Presence feels more nourishing than ambition. You begin to crave depth over distraction, authenticity over appearance. This is not withdrawal from life, it is a return to it. You are remembering how to live from the inside out. There is a profound truth revealed in moments of deep fatigue. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel, and you cannot rebuild what you are unwilling to dismantle. Exhaustion dismantles the false self so that the true self can emerge. It strips away the unnecessary so that the essential can be known. This is not a loss. It is a refinement. As the rebuilding continues, you may find that your energy returns in unexpected ways, not as frantic urgency, but as quiet vitality, not as compulsion, but as inspiration. This energy is sustainable because it is aligned. It flows from purpose rather than pressure, from love rather than fear. You are no longer pushing life uphill, you are allowing it to move through you. Trust this process, even when it feels uncomfortable, especially when it feels uncomfortable. Growth is rarely loud or dramatic. More often, it is subtle and inward, like roots deepening in the dark soil. You do not see the transformation immediately, but it is happening nonetheless. Every moment of rest, every act of self-compassion, every boundary you honor contributes to the rebuilding. Remember that you are not alone in this experience. Every soul that has ever awakened has passed through a season of exhaustion. It is the threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the quiet initiation into a deeper way of being. On the other side of this fatigue is not a return to the old life, but the emergence of a truer one. You are being invited to live without the constant burden of proving yourself, to move through the world with ease rather than effort, to recognize that your worth is inherent, not earned. When you accept this invitation, the exhaustion begins to soften. It no longer feels like an enemy, but like a teacher whose lesson is nearly complete. Allow yourself to be rebuilt gently. There is no deadline for healing, no standard you must meet. Life is patient. It knows exactly what it is doing. And as you surrender to this sacred pause, you may discover that the tiredness you once feared has opened the door to a deeper peace than you have ever known. In this rebuilding, you remember who you are, not the fragmented self shaped by expectations, but the whole divine presence that has always been enough. And from that remembrance, a new way of living unfolds effortlessly, guided not by exhaustion, but by inner freedom. And as this remembering deepens, you may begin to notice something quietly astonishing taking place within you. The exhaustion no longer feels like an abyss, but like a threshold. What once felt like emptiness now feels spacious. What once felt like loss now feels like relief. The frantic inner dialogue that demanded answers, solutions, explanations begins to soften, not because everything has been resolved, but because something deeper than resolution has arrived. Acceptance has entered the room. There is a moment, often subtle, almost unremarkable, when the soul exhales. You may feel it as a gentle loosening in the chest, a slowing of thought, a tender awareness that you do not have to figure everything out right now. This is the moment when rebuilding truly begins. Not through force, not through strategy, but through surrender. You stop wrestling with life and allow life to hold you. You start to see how much of your exhaustion came from resistance. Resistance to what is. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to the simple truth that you cannot control the timing of your becoming. When you release this resistance, energy that was once trapped in tension is freed. Not all at once, but gradually, like light returning at dawn. You realize that peace was never waiting for circumstances to change. It was waiting for you to stop arguing with reality. In this softer state, intuition becomes clearer. You sense when to move and when to pause, when to speak and when to remain silent. Decisions no longer feel like battles between fear and obligation, but like natural responses to the present moment. You trust yourself again, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the intelligence moving through you. There is a quiet dignity in this phase of life. You are no longer driven by the need to impress or outperform. Your worth is no longer up for negotiation. You begin to recognize the subtle ways you once abandoned yourself, saying yes when your body whispered no, staying where your spirit felt small, chasing validation instead of honoring truth. And without drama or self-blame, you gently choose differently. You may notice that relationships shift during this time. Some deepen, becoming more authentic and nourishing. Others fade naturally, not because of conflict, but because they were built on versions of you that no longer exist. Let them go without resentment. Nothing has gone wrong. Growth requires honesty, and honesty changes the landscape of connection. As the rebuilding continues, you begin to experience moments of simple joy, unremarkable on the surface, yet profound in their depth. A quiet morning, a breath of fresh air, a moment of stillness where nothing is required of you. These moments were always available, but exhaustion has cleared the noise that once drowned them out. You are learning how to receive life again. There is a sacred humility that emerges when you recognize that you are not here to dominate life, but to participate in it. You are not meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You are meant to be carried at times. This realization dissolves the illusion of isolation. You feel supported by something larger than your personal effort. Call it life, call it love, call it God. The name matters less than the experience of trust. And trust is what transforms exhaustion into renewal. When you trust that this season has meaning, that nothing is wasted, that even your weariness is part of a larger intelligence unfolding through you, the struggle eases. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What is being revealed to me?" In that shift of perception, healing accelerates. You are not being asked to return to who you were before you were tired. That version of you has completed its work. You are being invited forward into a quieter strength, a gentler power, one that does not shout to be heard or rush to be seen, one that knows its own depth and moves from that knowing. The rebuilding is subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. You may wake one day and realize that the heaviness has lifted not entirely, but enough to breathe more fully, enough to feel curious again, enough to sense that life is not something you must endure, but something you are allowed to experience. And even if exhaustion visits again, you will recognize it differently. You will not panic, you will listen. You will understand that it is simply another invitation to realign, to rest, to remember. Because now you know the truth. Nothing within you is broken. You were never failing. You were shedding what you were never meant to carry. As you continue forward, rebuilt from the inside out, you move with a quiet grace. Your actions are fewer, but more meaningful. Your words are simpler, but more honest. Your presence becomes your greatest offering. And in this presence, you find what you were searching for all along, not in striving, not in exhaustion, but in the gentle certainty that you are held, guided, and profoundly whole. And from this wholeness, a deeper awareness begins to take shape, one that no longer confuses stillness with stagnation or rest with retreat. You start to understand that life is not asking you to rush back into motion, but to move from a truer center. The rebuilding is not about becoming stronger in the old ways. It is about becoming more aligned in the new ones. There is a tenderness now in how you meet yourself. You no longer demand constant progress or relentless clarity. You allow uncertainty to exist without labeling it as failure. You recognize that not knowing is not a weakness, but a sacred space where wisdom forms quietly away from the noise of expectation. In this space, you discover that answers arrive not when you chase them, but when you are ready to receive them. Your relationship with time begins to change. The urgency that once drove you softens into patience. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly things unfold. You begin to trust the unseen currents guiding your life, even when they move more slowly than your mind would prefer. You realize that growth is not linear, and healing does not obey deadlines. Life unfolds in rhythms, not checklists. As this trust deepens, you feel less compelled to explain yourself. You no longer need to justify your pace, your choices, or your periods of withdrawal. You understand that alignment does not always look productive from the outside. Some of the most profound transformations occur in silence, in solitude, in moments where nothing appears to be happening at all, yet everything is happening. You may notice that your inner dialogue grows kinder. The harsh critic that once pushed you forward through shame and comparison begins to lose its authority. In its place emerges a quieter voice, firm but compassionate, reminding you that you are allowed to be human. allowed to rest, allowed to change your mind, allowed to begin again without punishment. This kindness is not indulgence, it is intelligence. When you treat yourself with compassion, your nervous system settles. Your body feels safer. Your energy returns naturally, not forced, not borrowed from tomorrow, but generated in the present moment. You are learning how to live without constantly draining yourself to prove your worth. And with this renewed energy comes discernment. You become more selective with where you invest your time, your attention, your heart. You understand now that energy is sacred. You no longer scatter it in places that leave you depleted. You choose environments, commitments, and relationships that support your well-being, not just your image. There is a quiet confidence growing within you, not the loud confidence of achievement, but the steady confidence of self-trust. You know, when something is not right for you, and you honor that knowing without guilt, you know when something resonates deeply, and you move toward it without needing permission, this confidence is calm. It does not rush. It does not compete. You begin to sense that life is not testing you, but teaching you. Every pause, every moment of fatigue, every unexpected detour carries information meant to guide you back to yourself. You stop resisting the lessons and start listening for their meaning. In doing so, you transform struggle into understanding. The rebuilding reaches deeper layers now. Old fears surface not to overwhelm you, but to be released. Fears of being unlovable without effort. Fears of being left behind if you slow down. Fears of losing control if you stop striving. You meet these fears with awareness rather than judgment, and in that awareness, they loosen their grip. What you bring into consciousness no longer controls you. There is a growing sense of inner freedom that cannot be taken away by circumstance. You realize that peace does not depend on everything going right. It depends on your relationship with whatever arises. You can be tired and still grounded, uncertain and still steady, in transition and still whole. And perhaps the most profound realization of all begins to settle in. You were never meant to live in constant exertion. Life is meant to flow through you, not be carried by you. When you align with this truth, effort gives way to ease, and exhaustion gives way to presence. You stand now in a different relationship with yourself and with life, not fully healed, not finished, but deeply aligned. You move forward without rushing, without forcing, without abandoning yourself along the way. And in this gentle forward movement, you embody the quiet miracle of rebuilding not as an event, but as a way of being. This is the sacred continuation. This is the life that emerges when you stop fighting your exhaustion and start listening to its wisdom. And so the balance begins to reveal itself not as a concept to be mastered, but as a lived experience unfolding gently within you. You start to sense that this season was never meant to leave you emptied, only emptied of what was false. What remains is quieter, yes, but also truer. Less dramatic, perhaps, but infinitely more real. You are no longer standing at the edge of exhaustion. You are standing in the center of yourself. There is a recalibration happening now, one that restores harmony between effort and ease. You recognize that action still has its place, but it no longer arises from panic or fear of falling behind. It arises from alignment. When you move because something within you says yes, not because something outside you demands proof. This is balance, not the absence of effort, but the presence of meaning. You begin to trust the pauses as much as the progress. You see how every inhale requires an exhale, how every expansion depends on a moment of contraction. The soul follows the same law. Exhaustion was the contraction, presence is the expansion. Neither is wrong. Both are necessary. And when you stop labeling one as failure and the other as success, you find peace in the rhythm itself. There is a groundedness now in your awareness. You are less reactive, less pulled apart by external noise. The world may still rush, still demand, still distract, but you are no longer compelled to match its pace. You move deliberately, anchored in an inner steadiness that does not waver with circumstance. This steadiness is not rigidity, it is resilience born of self-knowledge. You may notice that challenges still arise, but they no longer define you. They pass through your experience without taking residence in your identity. You have learned that difficulty does not negate your worth, and ease does not inflate it. You remain centered regardless. This is emotional maturity unfolding quietly, without announcement. As balance settles in, gratitude begins to surface. Not the performative gratitude that denies pain, but the honest gratitude that sees meaning even in hardship. You recognize how exhaustion redirected you, protected you, slowed you down before you lost yourself completely. You do not romanticize the struggle, but you honor the wisdom it delivered. You stand now at a midpoint, not between failure and success, but between doing and being. From here, life feels less like a series of hurdles and more like a conversation. You listen as much as you speak. You receive as much as you give. And in this exchange, energy circulates rather than depletes. The rebuilding continues, but it no longer feels urgent. It unfolds organically, guided by awareness rather than willpower. You understand that becoming is not something to complete, but something to allow. Each day offers its own balance point, its own invitation to stay present, to stay honest, to stay aligned. And as you walk forward from this place, you do so with a quiet assurance. You are no longer afraid of exhaustion because you know its purpose. You are no longer chasing wholeness because you have tasted it within. You move with life now, not against it, trusting that every phase, rest, and movement alike belongs. This is the balance you are being led toward all along. Not a perfect life, but a true one. Not endless energy, but sustainable presence. Not constant certainty, but deep trust. And in this balance, you continue awake, grounded, and gently free. And now, as this long inward journey comes to a quiet resting place, something within you recognizes itself again. Not as a role, not as a personality constructed through effort or survival, but as a presence that has never been damaged by exhaustion, never diminished by confusion, never lost in the passage of time. Beneath every tired thought, beneath every moment of doubt, there has always been a calm awareness watching, waiting patiently for you to return. You begin to sense that nothing in your life was ever wasted, not the burnout, not the tears, not the nights when you felt empty and unsure how to go on. All of it was shaping you, not by adding more to who you are, but by gently removing what you are not. The stripping away was the preparation. The weariness was the initiation. The stillness was the doorway. There is a profound peace that comes when you stop trying to outrun yourself, when you no longer demand that healing hurry up or that clarity arrive on command. You realize that life has always been moving at the precise speed required for your awakening. What felt like delay was protection. What felt like stagnation was integration. What felt like exhaustion was divine intelligence slowing you down so your soul could catch up. In this awareness, you no longer ask life to be easier. You ask to be present. You no longer plead for certainty. You cultivate trust. You understand now that strength is not the ability to endure endlessly, but the wisdom to rest without guilt. And in that rest, you discover a power far greater than force, the power of alignment. You feel yourself settling into a deeper relationship with existence itself. You are not standing apart from life, trying to manage it. You are participating in it, breathing with it, listening to it. The sense of separation softens. The illusion that you must carry everything alone dissolves. You are supported, always have been, by a current that knows exactly where it is going. And perhaps the most liberating realization of all gently dawns within you. You do not need to become anything else to be whole. You are not unfinished. You are unfolding. There is nothing missing. There never was. The exhaustion you feared did not arrive to break you. It arrived to bring you home. So you move forward now, not driven by urgency, not weighed down by the past, not anxious about the future. You move with presence, with humility, with a quiet reverence for the mystery of being alive. You honor your limits without shame. You follow your inner guidance without apology. You trust the pauses as much as the progress. And when tiredness visits again, as it will, in some form you greet it differently. You listen instead of resisting. You soften instead of pushing. You remember that within every slowing down, something essential is rearranging itself in your favor. This is the deeper truth you now carry with you. You were never falling apart. You were being gently rebuilt by something wiser than fear, kinder than judgment, and infinitely more patient than the mind. And as you rest in this knowing, you feel it, the quiet, unmistakable sense that you are exactly where you need to be, exactly as you are, held in a grace that has never stopped guiding you.